The store was quiet enough that I could hear the hum of the refrigerators even over the low rumble of traffic outside. I had been closing up for the night alone. My manager had left early, citing a migraine, leaving me with the fluorescent glow of the overhead lights and the endless, low, mechanical sigh of the refrigeration units. The air smelled faintly of bleach and cold pizza, the lingering remnants of the day's rush. I walked toward the basket stand by the entrance, noting that the top basket had a slight tilt, as though someone had nudged it carelessly. I adjusted it, pressing it flat against the others. It was awkwardly heavy, stacked with more baskets than usual, though I hadn't noticed any increase in customers lately. I shrugged, telling myself I must have miscounted. The quiet of the store made me hyper-aware of every creak in the floorboards, every distant car passing on the street. I glanced at the security monitor over the counter. The grainy black and white footage showed empty aisles. No one had been in the store for at least an hour. I stepped back toward the counter, then froze. The baskets, they weren't as I had left them. One had shifted slightly forward, the rest tilting into a more orderly stack. I blinked. The fluorescent light above flickered once, briefly, and I leaned closer. There was no breeze, no vibration that could have moved them. My pulse accelerated. I told myself it was gravity, a misalignment in the base, something logical. I took a deep breath and forced a laugh, the sound echoing too sharply in the emptiness. But as I straightened up, the top basket slid forward again, easing itself perfectly into place atop the others, like a hand had guided it. "No," I whispered to the empty store. "No one's here." I stood frozen, staring at the basket stand, my fingers brushing the counter edge. The hum of the refrigerators seemed louder, sharper, as though they had drawn closer. Every corner of the store was still. I could hear the faint drip of condensation from the soda machine in the corner, rhythmic, mechanical. But even that seemed somehow to accentuate the silence. I tried to convince myself I was imagining it, that fatigue was playing tricks on my mind. But then the next stack began to move. A lone basket, at the bottom, tilted slightly, then lifted itself with a subtle, deliberate motion, joining the others. My stomach knotted, and I felt a cold sweat prick the back of my neck. I stepped back, taking a slow breath. "It's impossible," I murmured. The words sounded hollow. I wanted to call for my manager, or a coworker, anyone. But the store's phone line had been dead for an hour. I wasn't sure when it had gone out, and the thought of leaving the baskets, of stepping outside into the empty parking lot, suddenly felt heavier than staying. I watched, frozen, as more baskets began to align themselves. They didn't fall over. They didn't clatter. They simply obeyed some invisible hand, arranging in perfect, silent order. Each movement was deliberate, slow, almost polite. And yet, with every basket that found its place, a prickling awareness grew at the base of my skull that this wasn't random. It was watching, measuring, waiting. I tried to look away, to busy myself with the register, pretending to check receipts or stock shelves. But the basket's progress kept pulling my attention. Every so often, a faint squeak of metal echoed from the stand as the newest basket slipped into position. The sound was small, almost negligible, but in the store's dead calm, it rang out like a warning bell. I convinced myself to step closer again, to touch a basket this time, to see if my hands could stop it. I reached out and placed my palm on the top of the stack. Nothing happened. The basket was still rigid against my hand. I exhaled, allowing my fingers to curl around the rim. The faint plastic texture was reassuring. Real. Solid. I could feel it, surely that meant I was sane. Then it moved. Not violently, not abruptly. Just a subtle lift, nudging my palm, gliding upward to slip seamlessly over the others. I jerked back, nearly stumbling over the counter, my heart hammering. The basket sat atop the pile as if nothing had happened, as if I had been an intruder in a chore already completed. I pressed my hands to my face, trembling, telling myself to calm down, to leave, to just go home. But I couldn't leave. Not yet. Something about the way the baskets moved, The precision, the almost courteous order demanded attention. I wanted to step away, but my feet were rooted to the floor. My eyes locked on the stand as it continued its silent, inexorable work. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time lost its meaning under the flickering fluorescence. The baskets continued to align themselves, stacking neatly with a rhythm I couldn't name. And with each movement, the store seemed to breathe around me. The hum of the refrigerators shifted subtly, the temperature dropping by imperceptible degrees. The shadows at the aisle ends lengthened slightly, stretching toward the basket stand. I started to talk to it nervously, almost apologetically. I'm just closing," I said, my voice cracking. I don't want any trouble." Nothing answered. Nothing moved except the baskets, inching themselves into increasingly precise arrangements. 1, 2, 3 at a time, rising, lowering, tilting with exactness. I couldn't stop staring. I couldn't explain why, but the air felt thicker around them, like the space between the stand and the ceiling had become a separate world. I tried to take a step back. My hand brushed the counter, and the motion sent a small basket sliding along the floor, but before it could topple, it stopped, righted itself, and returned to the stack. My denial broke somewhere in the middle of the 4th hour. I sat on the edge of the counter, hands wrapped around my knees, trying to convince myself I was hallucinating, sleep-deprived. Yet the baskets continued. I could see the weight of each one in my peripheral vision, the way they lined up without hesitation, without error. And with that, the most insidious thought crept in. This wasn't just movement. This was intentional. This was choice. I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to tell myself the store itself had no consciousness, that I was creating a pattern in my own mind. But the way the baskets paused occasionally, as though considering their next placement, made me shiver. Like they were aware I was watching. Like they were waiting for me to make a mistake or a decision. I tried the exit. The door rattled under my hand. Outside, the parking lot was deserted. The streetlights flickered, throwing long, liminal shadows over empty asphalt. I stepped forward, but the basket's movement pulled my gaze back inside. The way the topmost basket tilted slightly, almost teasingly, made me stop dead. I thought of calling for help. My phone rested on the counter, and for a brief, hopeful moment, I believed it would function. I lifted it. No signal. The screen remained dark, refusing to awaken. I slammed it down, trying to shake the dread that had settled like a stone in my chest. The last basket moved on its own accord. It rolled forward on the bottom, the gentle squeak of plastic against metal audible in the stillness. I realized, in a way that made my teeth ache, that the stacking had finished. But it hadn't stopped. The baskets shifted minutely, one by one, in subtle, almost imperceptible adjustments. I could feel it, not see it fully, but feel it, the store watching me, measuring me, waiting to see what I would do next. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. The light flickered again. I forced my legs to move, stepping backward, intending to leave, intending to never return. But the baskets seemed to lean slightly toward me as I walked away, nudging each other with an almost gentle insistence. The sound was soft, hypnotic. The hum of the refrigerators deepened, reverberating through my chest, syncing with the subtle shuffling of plastic. I didn't stop until the door was in sight, the threshold between me and the store's interior. My hand was on the handle when I looked back once, over my shoulder. The baskets were perfectly aligned. Not one was out of place. And then, as if acknowledging my hesitation, the top basket shifted slightly toward me, tilting forward in what felt like a deliberate, unnerving gesture. I didn't enter again. Not for weeks. Not until the night I found myself back in the parking lot, staring at the store from across the street, unable to stop. Through the window, I could see the faint fluorescent glare, the endless rows of neatly stacked baskets, waiting. And though the street was empty, the parking lot silent, the air unmoving, I could almost feel it, the store aware. It had noticed me, and I knew somewhere deep down that it would remember. The late shift always stretched longer than it should have. By midnight, the town had mostly gone quiet, leaving only the distant whisper of passing cars on the highway and the steady hum of the store's refrigerators. The fluorescent lights above the aisles flickered occasionally, never quite going out, just dimming enough to remind me how old the place was. I stood behind the counter pretending to organize lottery tickets. The store was small, 5 aisles, a wall of coolers, a rack of stale donuts near the register. You could walk from the door to the back freezer in maybe 10 seconds. I'd worked enough nights here to know every sound the building made. The slow creak of the chip rack, the tick of the ice machine cycling, the dull buzz of the beer cooler. Silence lived here after midnight. Not the peaceful kind, the heavy kind. The door chime rang. Startled me more than it should have. I looked up. A woman stepped inside. She moved slowly, like someone unsure of where she'd arrived. The door swung shut behind her with a soft thud, and the chime gave one last dull jingle before settling back into silence. She stood just inside the entrance for a moment, not speaking. The fluorescent lights flickered above her. She looked normal at first glance. Mid-30s maybe, dark coat, hair pulled back loosely. But something about the way she stood there felt slightly off, like a person pausing in the wrong part of a conversation. I gave the automatic greeting. Evening. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked down the aisles, slowly, one after another, like she was trying to remember something. Then she walked to the counter. Close, I noticed how pale she was. Not sickly exactly, just drained, like the color had been turned down slightly. Her eyes flicked toward the aisles again. Then she asked, very calmly, "Which aisle sells the exit?" For a second, I thought I'd misheard. "The exit." "Yes," she said. "The exit." Her voice was polite, matter-of-fact, like she'd asked where the bread was. I let out a small laugh. "The door's right there," I said, nodding toward the entrance. She followed my gesture. Her gaze lingered on the door longer than seemed necessary. Then she frowned. "That isn't it." Something about the certainty in her voice made the laugh die in my throat. "Well," I said slowly, "that's the only way out." She looked back at me. "No," she said, "it isn't." The refrigerators hummed louder for a moment. Or maybe the silence just thickened around us. She turned and walked down aisle 2. I watched her go. For some reason, I didn't feel like sitting back down. She moved slowly along the shelves of canned soup and boxed pasta, scanning them like she expected something unusual to appear between the labels. Every few steps she paused. The lights above her flickered. Outside, a car passed on the road. Its headlights swept briefly through the windows, washing the aisles in pale, moving light. Then it was gone. The woman reached the end of the aisle and turned the corner toward the coolers. A moment later, she reappeared. She looked confused now. "You moved them," she said. "Moved what?" "The aisles." I blinked. "I didn't move anything." She shook her head slowly, like she was humoring me. "This was the bread aisle." "It still is," I said. She turned, looked. The shelves now held snack cakes and jerky. I felt something tight pull in my chest. That wasn't right. I'd stocked the bread earlier that evening. She didn't say anything else, just walked down another aisle. The humming refrigerators seemed louder now, like they were filling the space between every thought. I stepped out from behind the counter. "Ma'am." She didn't answer. She reached the back of the store and stopped. The freezer door was there. The emergency exit was next to it. At least it should have been. But the wall was blank. Just white paint and an old promotional poster for energy drinks. I stared. The emergency exit sign was gone. The door too. The woman sighed quietly. "See?" she said. I swallowed. That can't be right." She looked at me the way someone looks at a person who hasn't realized they're lost yet. "How long have you been here tonight?" "Since 6. And before that?" "I mean today?" "Yes." I tried to think. The answer should have been simple. But for some reason my mind stalled on the question. The lights flickered again. When they steadied, the aisles looked different. Not drastically, just slightly misaligned. Aisle 3 felt farther from the coolers than it had been a minute ago. I walked toward the front door. The floor tiles clicked softly under my shoes. The door was still there. I grabbed the handle and pulled. It didn't open. I frowned and pushed. Nothing. The glass showed the parking lot outside exactly as it should. Dim streetlights, empty spaces, the quiet road beyond. But the door wouldn't move. Behind me, the woman spoke softly. "That one doesn't work either." My mouth felt dry. "What do you mean, either?" She walked slowly down the center aisle, trailing her fingers along the shelves. "I've been here before," she said. The hum of the refrigerators deepened again. The lights dimmed briefly. "How many times?" I asked. She shrugged. "I don't know." The store felt larger suddenly, like the ceiling had lifted slightly higher. I turned to look at the aisles again. There were more of them now. 7. I was sure there had only been 5. The woman stopped beside a rack of chips. She picked up a bag, turned it over, then set it back down. "You start by looking for the door," she said. I didn't answer. "Then you try the back exit." She walked to the coolers. Then the aisles start moving. The refrigerator lights buzzed faintly behind the glass doors. Rows of drinks stared back at us. "You think you're imagining it," she continued. I noticed something then. The windows at the front of the store no longer showed the road. Only darkness. I stepped closer, pressed my hand against the glass. Cold. Nothing outside. Just black. My pulse started to rise. "Why are you here?" I asked. She turned to me. "I'm looking for the exit." "But you said." "I haven't found it yet." A faint sound came from somewhere in the store. Plastic shifting. I looked down the nearest aisle. The baskets near the entrance were moving, slowly stacking themselves, one sliding neatly inside another. The woman didn't even look surprised. "It likes when you try," she said quietly. "Who?" "The store." The lights flickered again. When they stabilized, the aisles had shifted farther apart. They stretched deeper into the building than they should have been able to. My voice came out thin. "This place is small." She nodded. "It used to be." The silence thickened again. The refrigerators hummed. The baskets clicked softly together as another one slid into the stack. I looked back at the door. Still closed. Still locked. Or maybe it had never been a door at all. "How long have you been here tonight?" she asked again. I tried to answer, but the number wouldn't come. The clock behind the counter read 12:14. It had read 12:14 the last time I looked too. And the time before that. The woman walked toward aisle 7. I hadn't seen that aisle appear, but it was there now. The shelves were empty, just long metal racks stretching into shadow. She turned back to me. "If you find it," she said gently, "tell me where it is." "Find what?" "The exit." The lights flickered one last time. When they came back on, the front door was gone. In its place stood another aisle. I looked at the woman. She was already walking deeper into the store. And somewhere in the distance, farther away than the building should allow, I heard another door chime ring.